The Phoenix Suns have clinched a spot in the Western Conference playoffs, and on today's episode of Locked On Suns, we'll talk about another balanced win, and I'll take you inside the locker room. Pre-game, not post-game. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 5 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcast. New episode going up Wednesday for that show. Thank you for making Locked On Suns, though, your first listen here on this Tuesday night post-game into Wednesday morning. Whenever, wherever you're finding the show, a big thank you. If you're finding us for the first time or you've just never done so before, hit follow or subscribe to get this show in your feed every single Monday through Friday. Get locked on to your favorite team. You can also follow along at Locked On PHX Suns on Twitter to get new show updates, the 7-word or less game takes after competitive regular season games and playoff games. Unfortunately, tonight did not qualify for that, but you can get connected on Twitter as well. Today's show, guys, is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba and get on your way to being your best self. The score was 115-94. We're going to break it down. No moment of the game tonight, unfortunately, just because, look, the Suns owned this game throughout. There was a stretch in the third quarter, as there has been in several third quarters lately, where the Suns did let their foot off the gas a bit, but they very quickly piled on back to a 20-plus point lead, and everyone was able to get some reduced minutes tonight and a nice little W to keep the win streak going. Pull away to 44-35. It's looking more and more like this Suns team is going to be the 4 seed and going, obviously, to make the playoffs, as they clinched that tonight without a doubt. But instead of a moment, we're going to look at the big takeaway first, and that is balance, all right? This game had Devin Booker leading the way with 27 points, but altogether you had 6 guys in double figures. So Tory Craig stepping up tonight, Bismack Biyombo getting 10 of his own points, and then the big 4 in that starting lineup, Durant, Ayton, Paul, and Booker, all 18-plus points, with Durant actually in the rear at just 18, shooting below 50% from the field. One of his only games where he's really struggled, I would say, as a Sun. But again, not to emphasize that too much. The balance is the point here, and it's been a trend, to be honest with you. It's been a trend dating back to basically the games when Durant was out after that ankle sprain, when the Suns started to turn things around, I guess is too strong of a word, but come out of the losing streak that they went through with him sidelined, and they beat Philly, they beat the Jazz, and you were starting to see the bench chip in a big way back then, and you've seen it continue now. The interesting thing to note here is the first 3 games that Durant played in as a Sun. Okay, that was obviously Charlotte, Chicago, and Dallas. In the Charlotte game, the Suns only had 3 double-digit scorers, Booker, Durant, and Ayton. In the Chicago game, they had 5 guys in double figures, but it was Chris Paul with 11 and Damian Lee with just 10. Really, it was once again Booker and Durant, and then in that case, Okogie stepping up and making his threes to get to 25 points on the night. Dallas, similar result. It was Booker and Durant scoring 73 combined, and then it was just Chris Paul with 11, and then Ish Wainwright with that 3-point barrage late in the game to get to 12. And so you head into this game where the Suns were they've been the point that I've been making since Durant came back is that they have been combining what made them special as an individual team with what makes Durant special in a much more obvious and concerted way, and a much more beneficial way long term, I think you would have to say, because you just can't count on Durant. And you can't count on that Dallas game to happen every night. 73 points and then a few, guys making their threes. That's not going to be a sustainable way of doing things. And so this stretch, since Durant returned from the ankle sprain on through tonight, has been much more promising. Against the Nuggets, let's go to, the Nuggets game. On Friday, you had Booker with 27, Durant with 30, Okogie with 14. The Suns didn't score a ton of points in that game, but really Durant only took 15 shots, Ayton took 11, and Booker took 20, Paul took 9. It just happened to be that Durant made a hell of a lot of his shots, and therefore the Suns were in an okay position. You also look at the Minnesota game, the first night that he came back. Obviously, Durant missed a lot of his shots in that one, 5 of 18 from the field, but the Suns had 6 double-digit scorers in that game, all of the starters plus Cameron Payne. And then that brings us to the Thunder game, where we saw that for sure a lot of balance. 4 guys in double figures, but every one of them was over 16 points. That was the big 4. And then you had guys like Tory Craig with 8, Landry Shamet with 7, and again, Durant led the way with 21 shot attempts, but you had 14 from Booker, 12 from Ayton, 9 from Paul. That is all good stuff. And once again, tonight was really the best example of it. I've been tracking this all week long. I talked about it with Brandon on Monday's show, talked a little bit about it on Tuesday's show in terms of how the Suns beat the Thunder in a very impressive win. The usage has been much more balanced. Booker actually has now overtaken Durant in that category after tonight's game. Booker is at 30.1% usage. Remember, usage is shot attempts and turnovers. Assists are not included here. It's just how much are you either taking a shot or turning the ball over. That's what called using a possession, quote unquote. Durant at 29%, and then you have Ayton at 20, and Chris Paul just below 20 at 19.9%. And then mixed in there, you have, Cameron Payne, Landry Shamet right below that. But really, it's those top 4 guys, somewhere between 20 and 30% usage. That's where you want to be. Spreading the ball, moving the ball, playing in that 0.5 system that Monty Williams wants to see, but also obviously funneling shots as much as you can within that flow, within that structure and scheme to Booker and Durant. But that's natural. That's going to just happen. It doesn't need to be forced. Yes, you can always go to the default, cheat code of a Durant ISO. And I'm about to talk about how much of a cheat code that is from the words of Gregg Popovich in the next segment. You don't need me to tell you that. But to keep everybody comfortable, to not overdo anybody's individual responsibility, and to allow different players to step up each night rather than forcing yourself into needing a special performance from Booker or Durant in order to win. All of that to line up, you want to be playing that balanced style. And so, yes, it was just the Spurs. Yes, last week against the Nuggets, it was the B team Denver Nuggets. But these are the types of things we talk about when we say the Suns need reps. The Suns need to make the most of these games. Those kinds of generalities and vague things we all say, this is what it looks like in practice. And so, yeah, it was the Spurs. Yes, it should have been a game they won. I told you in my show getting into this game on Tuesday morning, my quick thoughts preview was they're going to win. They did. Look at that. I was right. But you can still take a lot away from it, and I'm sure they're getting to a level of comfort, and it doesn't matter to them that it was the Spurs, so it shouldn't matter to us as we evaluate it. Next up, I'm taking you inside the pregame press conference by Gregg Popovich because he, in my opinion, said it better than I ever could regarding Durant and why he is such a problem, such an unstoppable force, unlike anything in basketball. We'll get into that next. You'll hear directly from Pop. First, a quick break to tell you about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you try FanDuel. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes drained. Last year, one of my best gambling wins was Scottie Scheffler to win the Masters. He is the favorite right now, tied with Rory McIlroy at plus 700. I like the Masters. I don't even know that much about golf, but I feel like it just pulls everybody in. And honestly, it's better when you have a little money. Maybe spray some things around, sprinkle a little here, a little there, get the value where you can. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Gregg Popovich spoke pregame, and I'll give you a little bit of insight into what that experience is like because, to be completely honest with you, because the game was so lopsided, I didn't even say this in the last segment, but not only was it just the Spurs, it was also the B-team Spurs. So think about one of the worst teams in the league not even playing their best guys. That's what we got. That's why the game was so out of hand quickly. But because of that, my real takeaway from this game is going to be the pregame press conference from Pop. I'll play you the part that sticks out from what he did say, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what he didn't say and how that vibe and mood atmosphere was to be in with the notoriously prickly Gregg Popovich. But first, this quote is just a perfect encapsulation of Pop, who got to coach Durant in Tokyo in 2021 at that Olympics, and he just is talking here about how impossible it is to stop the man. So I'll let Pop take it away from here.
Coaching against him specifically in the playoffs as he's about to enter with Phoenix.
See, I don't remember any of those battles. I just remember him on the Olympic team. He was great, and I love him. All the other battles don't matter. The question is, how do you stop him, or what do you do with him?
Just the task you have as a coach and coaching against
he's
him.
the best. You can't stop him. There's no way that he can be stopped. Now you can go double team him for 48 minutes, and he's smart enough to give it up. But that usually doesn't happen. Somebody might box and want him, but I haven't seen it lately. So I got to believe that no matter what happens between he and Monty and Chris Paul and Book, they'll figure out what they need to do. He just, he's just got everything at that size and able to get a shot whenever he wants it. He loves it. I mean, nobody knows how hard he works. Nobody knows what he does before and after practice, especially after practice. When we were with USA, we'd have the practice, and then he'd go over in a bucket with one of the coaches, and he might go for another 25 to 35 minutes, hard, with every one of his moves in the book. I mean hard. From inside the bucket to the post to the three-point line, coming off this movement and that movement. We were just all in amazement, just watching it.
Not only for players like.
And I think that, look, we've heard about some of the legends of the warm-ups. I think that's part of why Durant twisted his ankle and had to sit out the way that he did. But you just, the part that jumped out to me really more than the behind-the-scenes stuff is just Pop putting into words. At the beginning there, he's being asked about the battles, right? Durant against the Spurs in 2017, Durant against the Spurs when he was in Oklahoma City in I believe they played in 12 and 13 or 13 and 14. One of their series was an absolute all-timer, just Durant against Kawhi up at, they're basically peaks as players, primes as players. And to have the perspective of somebody who's been in that and had to try to game plan for Durant and basically just saying, yeah, you just throw your arms up. There really is nothing you can do. It's kind of funny. It's one of those things where I've been so struck watching this guy and getting to kind of be around him a little bit since the trade 2 months ago, how simple he makes everything. And I always, getting to cover this stuff, be in person, ask these people questions, you try to humble yourself, right? Like, who am I? I'm some dumb 20-whatever-year-old who just wanders in there, never really played a lick of basketball in my life past, like, middle school. Who am I to ask anything or throw my opinion at anybody, right? But Durant has this funny way of, he kind of reduces the game to like playground ball in a way. He actually does bring the simplicity out of it in a funny way where my analysis, your analysis, listening, watching at home, talking to your buddies, it's the same exact thing that Gregg Popovich just said, right? It's like, you can't guard him. You can't do anything. And that's why I keep referring to that ace in the hole when I'm breaking down this Suns offense of like, yeah, they should be mixing things up. They should be trying to incorporate more of a scheme and structure, but they have the default of toss the ball to Kevin Durant at the elbow, in the post, give it to him at the top of the arc and let him drive. Whatever, as long as he's in a comfortable spot, it's going to be a bucket if everything is feeling good for him. I mean, 50, 60% of the time, it's going to end up that way if he's comfortable and open and in rhythm. There's not much you're going to do. And Popovich saying that is just another level, and it's just very cool to me. You're talking about legends of the game. You're talking about, one of the 2 or 3 best coaches in the history of basketball, most accomplished at the very least, all-time leader in wins, 4 titles, all that stuff. And he is looking at Kevin Durant and saying, yeah, there is nothing to be done. That is greatness. That is greatness, looking at greatness and appreciating it. And I just thought it was very cool. But to zoom out a little bit from that question and answer specifically, again, I'm not going to remember this game. I'm just going to tell you the truth. It wasn't that special. The Suns took care of business. Some of that balance stuff jumped out to me, so that's why I shared it. But really what I'm going to come away from this game remembering is the vibe and atmosphere pregame. It is bizarre. Like we all know the pop, the prickliness, the legendary, I guess you would say infamous interactions with people like Doris Burke and others in the TV interviews that he has to do, which I'm sure everyone at ESPN and TNT is breathing a sigh of relief that the Spurs have been largely irrelevant the past couple of years and they haven't had to bring Pop on national TV. But this carries over to pregame. I don't mean to throw shade at any of the great people who, cover the Spurs. We all get good information from San Antonio. I'm not trying to say that there's some sort of hole in the coverage of the league in San Antonio because these people are bad at their jobs. It's not about that. But there is a level of palpable intimidation and hesitancy from that media group covering the Spurs. To put it into perspective, the Spurs have a few people who travel. I think I counted, 2 or 3 people who were there from, the San Antonio side of things. None of them asked a single question during Pop's press conference pregame. I've never seen that in my life. That the media that travels to cover an away team, we're able to go into the away team press stuff as media members covering the Suns. It's not separated like that. So I'll go sometimes if there's some reason to. Pop being who he is, I'm going to go see that. But almost always you're just sort of listening to the road traveling beat reporters get the information that they need, something that they're writing a story about, injury updates, etc., etc. In this case, it was all Suns people asking about Durant and Monty. And the Spurs people, you could tell, like, it almost just felt like they just didn't have anything left to say. They've gone back and forth with this guy all season. They know what he's going to say. And if you ask something incorrectly, he's going to tell you about it. There was a question asked incorrectly, misremembering somebody who played for the Olympic team in 2021 that Pop was referencing in that quote I just played, in that clip I just played. And Pop went out of his way to say, oh, such and such didn't play that year. Just like derails the question to let you know that you messed up. It is just a very bizarre and strange thing, even in his elder years. Maybe it's even gotten worse. I don't know. What do I know? But I don't know if you find that interesting. Maybe it's just media nerdery there, but I hope I'm bringing you into the awkwardness and tension of just sitting in this thing while Pop is holding court, or I don't know. But then you also, when a question does land with him correctly, you get a great answer like the one that I played. So it remains one of the strangest dynamics in the NBA, and it traveled to Phoenix tonight, and I got to experience it. So I wanted to share that with you. But that'll wrap that part up. Let's get to our normal recap segments to close things out. I have a bench mob vibe check for you, and I have a box score oddity for you as well to close things out. First, today's show, guys, is brought to you by eBay Motors. That's right, a new sponsor of the show. We love to see that. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and it's the same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check again to know that that part will fit, or you get your money back because, again, just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Benchmark Vibe Check is pretty short and sweet today. A quick point of emphasis. A lot of the same guys are playing. We talked on Sunday that Landry Shamet broke into the rotation. That continued tonight. The interesting part here is that Cameron Payne was a DNP coach's decision. And so Shamet, I felt like, might be a candidate to replace Terrence Ross in the rotation, who had a nice lob in transition tonight, but is still cold from the field. Landry Shamet was as well. Neither of those two players made any of their shots. So tomato there, I guess, in terms of which one you go with. But rather than Ross losing minutes, what has actually happened is that Shamet seems to be absorbing Payne's spot in the rotation as the backup ball handler. You know, Booker is going to be able to do that. Durant is going to be able to do that. And obviously Paul is going to be able to do that. And so you don't really necessarily need a backup point guard, quote unquote, especially when you remember too, guys like TJ Warren and Terrence Ross are also, even whether they're playing with Payne or Ross or Shamet or whoever, they're going to be able to be comfortable with the ball in their hands too. So again, lessens the need for a true backup point guard. But this goes hand in hand with the other trend, the bigger trend that I think will matter for the playoffs, because really, you know, whether it's Shamet or Ross or Payne, you're talking about 8 to 10 minutes in a big playoff game. The bigger thing is Monty has been vocal about it, and you can see it playing out in his rotation, the desire to have two starters on the court basically at all times. And the biggest way we've seen that is to have Chris Paul now at the beginning of the second and fourth quarter on the court with the Kevin Durant plus bench lineups that we've seen do a lot of damage. Those lineups were very good without Paul, but Monty has talked about the desire to have more of a floor general on the court at those moments. And I get that. I think that the lineup that we're now seeing basically be that second unit, it's so mixed up now that there's really not a first and second unit because there's so many starters playing with the bench. But it is, tonight it was Chris Paul, Terrence Ross, Tory Craig, Kevin Durant, and Bismack Biyombo. And so you have Craig to provide, you know, the physicality and have a defensive option. Ross is basically a shooter in that lineup. And then Paul, Durant, and then Biyombo being the backup five. I could see that changing. I could see Ross being switched out for a different player. I could see Landale playing more at times as well. I could see that bench unit being Durant at center with maybe somebody like TJ Warren filling in as more size-ish Wainwright, potentially doing that. But the flip side of that is that you, again, have more of a need for Shamet in a different way over somebody like Payne, where with the Booker-centered units at the end of the first quarter, end of the third quarter, Shamet is sort of a co-ball handler playing alongside Booker. TJ Warren is in those lineups typically as well as another scoring option. And so I feel like it's early stages. It's been against the Thunder in spurts and now the Spurs in a blowout. But I like the balance that allows as well. You're getting more two-way, properly sized. Like, it just, the lineups make a lot more sense, I think. You know, you're not trying to ask too much of somebody because you have at least those two starters and you're able to have your best bench players, at least one of them in each lineup. So with that bench, that Durant and Paul unit, you have Tory Craig out there, which is a nice stabilizer. With the Booker lineup, you're able to put Warren, you're able to put Shamet, two guys who can create and score for themselves too, so Booker doesn't have as much pressure. I like it. I think it's shaping up in a good direction. The last thing here, box score oddity, is Tory Craig's game tonight. 15 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists in 25 minutes. The Suns outscored the Spurs by 28 points when he was in the game tonight. Probably one of his better overall games of the season, and an opportunity for me to sing his praises, because I talked about it with Brandon on Monday's show, the idea that I feel like Tory Craig is providing you somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 or 80% of what you were getting out of Jay Crowder in the past. Now, I think Crowder has more confidence as a shooter. Maybe you would say a little bit of a better shooter overall. And he's a better, higher IQ team defender, I would say, on the whole. But Craig is bigger. Craig is taller. Craig is stronger. And the shooting this year hasn't really been that different. Tory Craig quietly is shooting 39% from deep heading into this game on the season in 75 games played. He's going to end up near 80 games played. He has been an Iron Man for this team, and he's made his shots. And even beyond that, you've talked about all the different stretches of seasons that he's played with the Suns, the end of 2021, the end of 2022, and now this full year. He's now taken heading into this game, it was 422 three-point attempts as a Sun. Tonight he was 1 of 3, so that puts him at 425. He has made 158 of those. That is 37%. And so that's a big enough sample for me to look at it and say the 0.5 offense, Chris Paul is a ball handler, all of that has combined to get Craig better shots, higher quality shots that he's more comfortable taking, and he's been a better shooter than he has anywhere else. He's been a genuine threat, a genuine floor spacer. Our team's still going to help off of him when the other option is Durant or Booker or Paul. Yeah, of course, he's going to be the guy that gets left open, but he's going to make defenses pay, I think. I think you can confidently say that he's going to be able to make open spot up threes at this point. And so that part of what Crowder was doing starts to be less of an advantage on Crowder's side. And I think what the Suns need right now defensively looks much more like what Craig provides than what Crowder did. And I know it's weird to compare them 1-to-1, but I just think we all knew how much Crowder provided. There was no doubt about his value. And I don't think Craig gets that level of respect. And so the night tonight was very good. He hits the ground. He collides with other players more than anybody on this roster. He's not afraid, not embarrassed, not hesitant to play that super physical style. And I think that is going to be very, very valuable. I think I've said this before, but he to me is the only lock in the playoff rotation right now. And that's because he's earned it over the course of the season, over the course really of 3 seasons. And I think what he provides off that bench is the least replicable and most valuable thing that any player on that bench is providing the Suns right now. And he's going to be in this rotation to close out the year and to start the postseason. And it's well earned. All right, that'll wrap us up. 115-94, Suns beat the Spurs. Hit follow or subscribe to get this show in your feed the rest of the week and beyond as we get closer and closer and closer to the playoffs. Stay locked on to your favorite team. In the meantime, go make Locked On NBA your second listen today. Get caught up on all things NBA around the league, standings, seeding, playoff potential, awards. Joel Embiid had a crazy night. All of that is going to be on Locked On NBA. That show's available on all podcast platforms as well. And I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow.